All right. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Sean Black, aka DFS 5050. You can please follow me on Instagram at DFS 5050. I have a Facebook page also, DFS 5050. Of course, in that page, what I'll be doing, I'll be showing my wins, my losses. I'll be showing some tips and some things that I'm looking at going into the following weeks of the NFL, NBA season, and soon NHL. I'm learning more about NHL, so that's another thing that I want to definitely kind of get into. But nonetheless, one of the things that I want to show you guys today is the results that I had on both Fanduel and Draftkings. And basically, this has actually been a very successful weekend compared to the past 3 weeks that I've had. Of course, week one I lost some money. Week two I lost about the same. Week three I basically lost less than normal, and then of course week four I basically more or less doubled my money. But in any case, the top lineup that I had was a Matt Ryan and Julio Jones stack. And that stack right there got me 203 points, 203.62 to be exact. And basically, make a long story short, um, it was actually the best lineup I've had out of all the lineups that I had between DraftKings and FanDuel. But with that being said, Matt Ryan went off. He had 503 pass yards, one interception. Of course, he got some points for that additional 300 pass. He had four pass TDs. Let's see what else. Tevin Coleman. I was kind of chasing points on Tevin Coleman. I honestly believe that Tevin Coleman was going to get as much targets, or at least the even amount of targets as Devontae Freeman did. And I was really going for value in this situation. He only gave me 6.3 fantasy points, and that's fine. I mean, you can't predict how a person's going to perform. You can only predict, basically if they're in a good position to give you what it is that you need out of fantasy points and those type of stats. Duke Johnson, honestly, he was more of a punt play for me as well. When I was picking him, I was just thinking to myself, like, okay, well, I knew that Washington's run game was okay. It was average. So I knew that, with the type of desperation play that Cleveland was going to be playing with, I knew that they were going to be utilizing every single man on deck because of the injuries, because of all the other craziness that's been going on with that particular franchise. So I say, you know what, let me use a good, a solid running back for a good price. And as you can see, he was 0.8% owned and gave me 13.4 fantasy points. I'm not sure exactly how much he was worth here on DraftKings, but I'm pretty sure we can look that up when I go to the Daily Fantasy and Nerd lineup optimizer. Michael Crabtree, he was 3% owned, and he went off. He gave me 33.8 fantasy points. And honestly, I was expecting Baltimore to win this game, but that did not happen. So that's okay. It is what it is. I was looking for more volume in this game, but for the most part, Vegas kind of predicted them to. Vegas predictions were correct on this one as far as the over/under in the game, and I was definitely happy with the fact that he was that low owned, and he gained that many points. And it's funny because when I was thinking about Michael Crabtree, I was telling myself, I said, you know what, I should probably put him in the other lineup where I had Amari Cooper, and sure as hell, he did what he was supposed to do. And sometimes it's just good to just go with your gut feeling. But, let's move on. Julio Jones had a monster-ass game, and he got 51 fantasy points, 300-plus receiving yards, one touchdown. And honestly, I had the pleasure of actually going out to the game with one of my brothers, my man Sean, Sean, right? But we had a great time, and it was really, it was literally history in the making, man. Just seeing, wow, these guys played for 500 yards and got these many, receptions and touchdowns, and I mean, it was just like a match made in heaven, honestly. When everybody was counting Carolina to win, and man, let me tell y'all, it was some salty Carolina fans in the Georgia Dome. I ain't gonna lie. Moving on, Demaryius Thomas, he was in a great matchup against Tampa Bay. And I was actually listening to one of the podcasts. I don't know if it was Evan Silva's podcast or Tommy G's podcast. I can't remember which one it was. But there was basically naming an interesting stat. They were basically saying, hey, when it comes to Tampa Bay, plug in the opposing wide receiver. Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. And in particular, I decided to pick Demaryius Thomas because I felt like he's been the most consistent out of the 3 wide receivers that they use. And I knew that him and the quarterback, I forget his name, but they had a good chemistry together. I think it's Simeon, I believe. But anyways, make a long story short, he did very well. He what was the word I'm looking for? He basically went off for 21.4 fantasy points, and of course I needed that. Travis Kelce, of all people. I really, honestly, guys, I was really expecting Travis Kelce to give me about 20 to 25 fantasy points. I felt like he was in a really, really solid position against Pittsburgh. Mind you, Pittsburgh was only supposed to only beat Kansas City by 3 points. But I actually had an opportunity to see this game later on that evening. And he just kept dropping the ball, man, like important passes too. I mean, he finally got like a garbage time touchdown, but I mean, I felt like he had so many opportunities to catch the ball and get some good yardage and to add to the points. And just to show y'all how close I was to number 1, I was basically, give or take, 20.5 points to number 1, right? Now, and honestly, I wasn't really pushing for number 1 in this particular slate. I was more or less going for I was looking for the top 5 position. I think that was really the number 1 thing I wanted to go for. I wanted to go for the top 5 position because in this particular slate, 40% of the pool will win. So that means out of 100, 60% will lose, 40% will win. I felt like it was a good entry or contest to get into. So even your worst of lineups will have a better chance of cashing. And some may even cash big. Now with this situation, just to kind of veer off of my lines, this same line, if I'm not mistaken, in a higher entry cost pool, probably would have put me in the top 10. Yeah, I think it would put me in the top 10. If I'm not mistaken, I was looking at some other reviews of some other people's lines, and I think it was Bell's, and I think his highest score was like 189. And this is Bell's from Fantasy Labs, for y'all that don't know. I think his highest score was 189, and he did good on the buy-in, but my 2 or 3 would have definitely made top 5 in that particular tournament that he was in. But I guess the difference between Bell's and I is that I'm still working on building my portfolio, building my cash up to where I can start doing those bigger tournaments. And that's why I'm pushing for these smaller tournaments where I know I have a good chance of winning. And, in this tournament, $1,500 went to first prize. And then second and third would get somewhere between, second would get $750 and third would get $500. And that's what I was going for. I was just going for that chunk of money so I can start, doing the Millie Makers and using these same lines that I have in the Millie Makers. And I knew that every week I was going to get better and better because I'm utilizing the knowledge that I'm gaining from what I'm learning through the DFS Army, through some of the articles that Fantasy Labs is putting out, through, all these different beat writers and just different podcasts that I listen to. Anyways, Carlos Hyde was really, he, from a defense versus position standpoint, he was like number 2 on the list. And I will show y'all what I mean by that in a few seconds here. But as you can see, he only gave us 14.9. It was a close game. I actually had a chance to see that game too. That was pretty cool. But I wasn't really expecting for Hyde to be that highly owned. But in any case, I mean, in a situation like that, I could probably have went with Terrell Pryor, who was cheaper, and and put him in the flex, and I probably would, I mean, there would have been 1 point more, but the ownership would have been a whole lot different. And the thing is, again, guys, when it comes to ownership, if you have a lower owned person that produces more than a higher owned person, you're bound to get moved up in the ladder when it comes to rankings and stuff like that, and or place. And the higher the place, of course, the more you cash. All right, so moving on. Here's another one of my lineups. I had a Hoyer stack with DeAndre Hopkins. Well, of course, DeAndre Hopkins laid a goose. I had some choice words for DeAndre Hopkins, honestly. And I was really trying to be contrarian. And the reason I say that is because William Fuller actually got the majority share of the targets. And, honestly, for the life of me, I was thinking about it. Actually, I apologize. I am so sorry. Brian Hoyer is with Chicago. Brock Osweiler and DeAndre Hopkins, I thought that they had a good chemistry, and I still believe that they do. However, everyone, from what I was hearing across the industry, was on Will Fuller. They were on Fuller. Play Fuller. I know I don't want to play Fuller, because the thing is, I had a feeling that he was going to be highly owned. So, in any case, I went with DeAndre Hopkins, even though he was more, and I felt like he was going to, go ham and do at least 20 to 30 fantasy points, but that was not the case. I don't know. I didn't really get a chance to see that game. I don't know if he, had, got hit or something, or what was going on. If he, might have went into some, the wrong chick the night before. I don't know. But he definitely, needless to say, messed up my line. I probably could have had like Allen Robinson or somebody else, and I could have, got a higher points. Anyways, Jordan Howard, he was a punt play. He was lower owned, and he was definitely someone that everyone was highly on. And of course, they were right because he ended up scoring 19.2 fantasy points. Brian Hoyer went off, even though he, they won by 3 points. He still went off. I mean, that was just a cool game to see. Ezekiel Elliott went off, and for anybody that is going into week 5 and minus the bye week that Dallas may have, I want y'all to understand something. This is a rookie running back. And this dude is built like he's been in the game. He's been in the industry or the NFL for like 5-6 years. He's built like that as a rookie. So his stock is going to go up. His price is going to go up, but his production is going to go up just as much as his stock too, because there's not really a lot of team defenses that can really stop the run or the way he's running. He's almost matchup proof, but as the weeks go on, we will see. All right. So he was a good look. He gave me 25.7 fantasy points. Eddie Royal, he did really good. Him and Brian Hoyer, they went off, and that was a good stack for me. Of course, I used Emmanuel Sanders. Remember, I was telling you guys on the other lineup, I had Demaryius Thomas, right? So then I had Emmanuel Sanders in this one, and both of them, they did pretty well. I mean, I can't argue with it. And again, that whole podcast that was telling me that Tampa Bay are really weak against the wide receivers, I took that to heart and I plugged them guys in, and you see the points there. Zach Miller, I really like Zach Miller, and he gave me the points that I wanted for his price. I think he was 2,700. So he did what he was supposed to do. You know, yes, I was looking for the 30, the 25, 30 that he did a couple in week 3, but it's okay. Antonio Brown, I honestly felt he was going to have just as much of a monster game as Julio Jones, but of course at the last minute they kind of shelved them because at that point they basically were blowing out Kansas City by, I think, going into the third quarter, it was 29-0. All right, and then Broncos D, I think might have been the top rated D. They might have been the top D for this weekend, because if not them, it might have been. Can't remember what was the other defense that was good. But anyways, moving along. So as you can see, 203, 168, 156. I have Phillip Rivers, Ezekiel Elliott, Carlos Hyde, Antonio Brown, Terrell Pryor Sr., who gave me 15 points, Demaryius Thomas, Zach Miller, Greg Olsen. Oh my God, yo, this dude went off at the last minute, and I needed him to do that too. So he was good. Ravens defense was really a sneaky GPP play for me, and they only gave me 1 point. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Again, if y'all haven't heard any of my other reviews or lineup shows, I will always tell you, you got to live and die by your decisions. And when it comes to DFS, you got to make a decision. You got to pull, you got to pull the plug on something, or you got to push a button on something. And I'd say, you know what? I like the Ravens. They were, they done pretty well defensively in the previous weeks, and I felt like they were going to continue that particular trend. And of course, the trend got stopped, and that's fine. No worries, whatever. My last one here, 125.82 is the least, and I had a Joe Flacco, Mike Wallace stack, and if I was to do that again, I would have loved to have had Steve Smith Sr., but I felt like Flacco and Wallace had a good combination together, and together they were going to be super, super low owned. I think Steve Smith Sr. on a couple of other lineups, I think he was like 15 to 20% owned. So that wasn't too much of a mystery there. Doug Baldwin was a disappointment in this lineup. However, this lineup was in the NFL 5K free survivor contests round 2. And so basically I get to go into round 3 with this low score. So that was cool. I'm not complaining. So I know the rounds can get tougher and tougher, but I made it. So that's the most important thing. Going into tonight, I have Kyle Rudolph. I'm missing Kyle Rudolph, and he was projected high on the defense versus position as well. I think he was like top 5, top 10, somewhere in there. And I knew that they're playing at home, and I know last time he played at home, he did very, very well. So those are my, DraftKings scores for week 4. And then for Fanduel, I did pretty well. I doubled my money on Fanduel. I don't really put a lot of cash into Fanduel, only because what I want to do is I want to kind of grow this. And actually, this account grown because I took it from, I think I put like maybe $10 in there. I put $10 in there. I went from 10 to 60. And then, of course, me playing MLB, which is a highly volatile game, and it takes a really strong skill set that I'm still developing. But yeah, some of that money that I had went towards that, and I didn't do so well with ending the season. Nonetheless, these are my top 2 scores right here. One was 150, one was 145. As you can see, I had Cam Newton, who laid a half an egg. And I, of course, when you lay an egg, that's 0, but he laid half an egg, right? So if he laid no eggs, he probably would have had a score of 30 or better. Derek Carr, he had 23.76 points. I picked Lamar Miller. He was 5% owned. And again, guys, one of the things I want to show you guys too is look at the ownership on some of these people. The ownership was crazy low. on a lot of these teams, and that's what really helps you get to the top. Now, and then of course, sound decisions too make a big difference. But most importantly, I mean, this is what what was going down. As you see, my top line, the ownership was moderate. It wasn't super low owned, but it was doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Now, had it, I think sometimes the one thing that I would say that us as DFS players kind of go through is making sure that we don't overthink our process and just let our process do all the work and us just trust the process most importantly. If, of course, we could play the whole I wish I would have did this, that, and the third, but I'm going to say it. I wish I would have had Crabtree in here instead of Travis Benjamin, because honestly, that additional 24 points, let's see, that would put me at like 180 something. And let's see, let's look at something here. I mean, hell, on a $1, I would have won $75. I mean, that's 75 times the money. You can't go wrong with that. But in any case, that's what ended up happening with that. I did have a couple of other lines that did okay. They barely cashed, if I'm not mistaken. But I guess everyone had the same lineup, and that lineup was Brock Osweiler, Melvin Gordon, Ezekiel Elliott, which is actually surprising. Terrell Pryor, of course, DeAndre Hopkins laying that wonderful egg. Emmanuel Sanders, Zach Miller, Dustin Hopkins, and Houston Texans. That lineup, I think everyone had that lineup in that particular place. I think everybody shared that same lineup in the that pretty much garnered 150 or whatever. So going into week 5, I'm going to see here. One second, let me pull up Daily Fantasy Nerd here. And going into week 5, one of the things that I probably might go be doing that I honestly haven't put too much muscle on, but I should, is I'm going to be playing a lot more cash games as much as I am playing GPP. And the reason being is because I really have a desire to build my bankroll. And one of the goals that I want to do is I'm building my bankroll so I can consistently get into the Millionaire Maker and play that for the rest of the NFL season without having to deposit any more of my own money into the account. I know it's going to take a lot of faith and it's going to take a lot of skill. And every week I'm just learning, new techniques and new ways of doing things and becoming better and better. I mean, and eventually, become a top-ranked DFS player in the NFL and hopefully in the NBA once I get my system down with that. But the thing that I'm very big on, guys, is I'm very big on defense versus position. I'm very, 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 very big on that. Again, I am very, 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 very big on that. I am very big on that. So that's something that I want y'all to understand. Let's see, looking for a lineup here. Let's see, that's right. And one more thing. This lineup right here, this is a lineup that I gave you guys on, I believe, Friday or Saturday. I gave you guys this lineup. So if you didn't see the video, I'm sure that this lineup I did give out to you guys. And this was basically on the strength of defense versus position and also the usage rate as well. But in this particular thing, what I want to show you guys again is, Kirk Cousins, Phillip Rivers, they were highly owned. Trevor Samuel was going to have a monster game, but he got injured. Cody Kessler, he did good. Brian Hoyer did good. Brock Osweiler did good. Surprisingly, there were a couple of things I was looking at. I was looking at the DVP, and then I was looking at the projected points. And, you know, when you do those type of combinations, then you can see exactly where the ball is going to go and who's going to be doing the majority share. Now, Kansas City, I think this season they're overrated defensively. I feel like they're overrated defensively. I feel like the Carolina Panthers are overrated defensively. And you got to think, Ben Roethlisberger performs well at home. If you have a good performing quarterback playing at home, plug him in, because at the end of the day, they're playing at home. They're not going to disappoint the home team unless something happened, unless a virus came in and they just couldn't do what they were supposed to do. All right, so it was just something to think about. But his DVP was not necessarily in favor of Ben Roethlisberger, but Ben Roethlisberger would have been a perfect example of a contrarian play, just as much as Le'Veon Bell. Okay, going into the running backs, show you guys the DVP there. Melvin Gordon was good for it. As you can see, there was 42 likes on Melvin Gordon inside the DFS nerd community. Next up was next up was Ezekiel Elliott. Of course, I picked him. Mark Ingram was very popular. Of course, I was telling y'all about Duke Johnson, and I picked Duke Johnson over Isaiah Crowell just on value and price. His value was at 3.0 at 4 Gs. Isaiah Crowell was 4.4 at 2.7, and I think they pretty much did about the same there. Let's see, what's another person that was plugging in? Carlos Hyde. He was on the lower end of the defense versus position, but he had a higher value rating. And he met value. He gave us, 14. He gave us exactly 14.9 points. Let me see. Let me look here. Where is it? Where is he? Yep, he gave us exactly 14.9 points. Okay, and then Ezekiel Elliott, he gave us almost 9 points above his expected projection, which is always good. That's what you really want to go for. All right, so that's that. And like I said, going into week 5, I honestly probably won't go anywhere under 12 in the DVP, maybe depending on the situation. If a player is playing at home or away, I just got to look at the stats and see where it lands. But if I was to just go strictly on defense versus position, I would have just stayed with Melvin Gordon and Ezekiel Elliott throughout all of my lineups. But, of course, if you're playing GP, if I was just playing cash, then yeah, I would just run DVP all the way through, right? But because I'm playing GPP, you also want to have variations in your lineups, because you just don't know, one, who's going to go off, and two, who's going to go off by how much. Proven example, Julio Jones. Julio Jones probably projected to score, I'll tell you right now, he was projected to score, let's see here, I'm about to pull it up. Julio Jones. Where are you, Julio? Man, look, let me tell y'all something. Julio Jones, I think, might have been on the bottom of the barrel not in the projections, but just on defense versus position. But I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to fantasy points projections. Julio Jones was only supposed to score 25.2 fantasy points. He was projected to score 25.2 fantasy points, and this dude went off and gave us 51. So he doubled his expectation. And like you said, sometimes you just got to dig deep. And the thing is, he's playing at home. So if he was playing the away games, as you can see, when he plays at home, he plays a whole lot differently than he plays on away games. And I mean, he did what he was supposed to do. So you know, there's a lot of correlation between home and away games. And again, that was just something that I was just looking at. Of course, Brown was highly in the list projection wise, and he missed it by 6 points, which is fine, no big deal. Marvin Jones, he underperformed, but then again, the defense wasn't. Chicago's defense against the run was, against the air game was actually decent, surprisingly. I thought that he might have been matchup proof, but I think that lingering injury might have kind of cut off his step, so to speak. Of course, I was big on DeAndre Hopkins, and I told y'all he basically laid an egg for your boy, Damari. But if you was to go into the DVP aspect of it, guys, I think I was going for Jamison Crowder. I should probably went with Pierre Garçon, and or maybe Deshaun Jackson, but it's okay. Terrell Pryor, he had a good matchup, and he gave us a couple of points more above the expected salary. And again, this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, the what the defense is able to give us, and then go from there. Travis Benjamin, Tyrell Williams, these guys, they had an opportunity to really do some damage, and I don't think they took full advantage of what New Orleans has to offer the air game or the pass game for most people. And that's basically what I was looking at. I was looking at these plays and, just seeing who was going to really, take it home. So, yeah. So going into that, then, of course, tight ends. Greg Olsen was on the top of my list, and he performed. He gave us right around 7.4 points above his expected projection. Hunter Henry, he did pretty well. I think he gave us 16. So he gave us 4 points above expectation. Zach Miller gave us, we'll see, 2.2 points above expectation. Let's see. I don't know what Kobe Fleener did. I know Tammy gave us 7. He was supposed to score 10, but he didn't really get that many targets. So, those say, like, again, the DVP is, honestly, I feel I'm going to make a bold statement. I feel like the defense versus position never lies, right? That's how I personally feel. So if I'm just going to be a safe player, I'm always just going to go with the defense versus position, because in the NFL, as opposed to other sports, it is very, very accurate how a team plays against the position. It's very accurate how the defense plays against position or how the offense plays against defense, however you want to put it. It's accurate, guys. It's very, very accurate. And when I say I live and die by my decisions when it comes to defense versus position, I really mean that, because, if I was to just play cash games, I would dominate my cash games. But I like the thrill of GPP, and that's why I do what I do. Okay. Defense, I probably should have done more research on defense, to be honest with you guys. I really was just trying to figure out who had the best situation. And as I'm playing around with this, I think from now on, the one stat that I'm going to be looking at when it comes to defense is the fantasy points allowed or the points scored by offense. All right. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking at. But most importantly, fantasy points allowed. I think that's going to be the one, because let's see here. Texans gave us 10 points. Washington Redskins gave us about 8 points. Let's see. Denver Broncos, they Oh. Brown, Charger, Bear, Bills. So how can I get? Okay, sorry. I'm looking at. Okay, so it's either going to be fantasy points allowed or Vegas projected points against. So as you see, them Broncos gave us the highest. They gave us 15 fantasy points. So this particular column here and this particular column here in the Daily Fantasy Nerd Optimizer for both Fanduel and Draftkings and Yahoo Sports for those that like to play Yahoo. These two columns are going to be key in choosing your defense for the upcoming weeks. And guys, I mean, that's what I have to offer you guys. That's basically where I'm at. You know, this is how I and potentially am working on making a living off of this. And again, the main key that I want to preach to you guys is have a purpose for doing it outside of having fun. Because when you play daily fantasy sports, it takes if you're wanting to do this professionally, you have to treat it like a full-time job, but make sure you love the sport. Make sure you love it. Make sure you have an appreciation for it before you go into it. And if you don't, find somebody that does and learn from them, and then somewhere along the line, you can just grow to love the sport, and you would be willing to take the time out to do the research and do your homework and listen to the podcast and look through some spreadsheets and look through, the defense versus position and all these different things to help you be consistent and have fun. Like right now, I know I'm not winning as much money as I want to, but I'm building my bankroll so that I can start playing bigger and really reaping the benefits of playing NFL DFS, especially on Draftkings and Fanduel too. So just keep that in mind. And again, shameless plug. I'm using Daily Fantasy Nerds Optimizer as well when I build my lineups, and I'm also just using their, just using their overall projection system to really help me with who I need to pick. And then from there, I get a good idea of who has a prime position for the week, right? With Daily Fantasy Nerd, they put out the projections on Wednesday. So, I have an idea as to who I'm looking at, who I should be looking at. And what I do, actually right next to me, I have a pen and a pad, and I write down some of the top plays that I feel are going to be worth the look for this weekend. And then I find out more information through podcasts and through other situations. And then from there, come Friday or Saturday, I start building my lineups. And then on Sunday, I double check, make sure that the people that I've picked are playing. And then from there, hey, guess what? Faith and skill, let it go, let God, and then everything else will work itself out later. This is your boy Sean Black. Thank you so much for tuning in to my results and the review and what I'm looking at going into week 5. And again, just to give you a summary of everything, I'm going to be focusing on investing more of my money into cash games as much as I do in GPP tournaments. And also I'm looking at the defense a lot differently as well. And I'm also looking at the defense versus position in each position about the same, but with the defense, I'm looking at 2 particular stats, and that's the fantasy points allowed, and then also the Vegas projected fantasy points against. So this is your boy Sean Black, aka DFS 50/50. Y'all have a blessed day, and remember, faith and skill. Let's get it.